is here. And before we get into the rest of the agenda, I would like to read, because I don't often do this, just because we do have some issues tonight, clarify what our Planning and Zoning Commission is set up to do and is authorized to do. The City of Casper Planning and Zoning Commission is a volunteer body composed of members of the Casper community and appointed by the City Council. The Commission acts as a quasi-judicial panel, making final decisions on some specific items and recommendations to the City Council on other items as dictated by law. The Commission may only consider evidence about any case as it relates to existing law. The Commission cannot make or change planning or zoning laws, regulations, policies, or guidelines. And that's just for clarification as to what our role is. I would now ask for approval of the November 21, 2019 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the prior meeting.
Moved by Commissioner Frank. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Are there corrections or additions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, we have 5 items on our agenda tonight. I am going to take them not quite in the order that they appear in the agenda, and I would ask to hear PLN 19-039S first. This being a petition to amend the Centennial Hills Planned Unit Development PUD guidelines to create new commercial development and architectural standards to regulate the development of Centennial Hills Village Business Park Number 3, 10.18 acres located between Wyoming Boulevard and Heathrow Avenue, south of Centennial Court and north of Centennial Village Drive, the applicant being 1030 Partners, LLC. And I understand that the applicant has asked for a continuance on this issue until the January 16, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that request for a continuance, I would entertain a motion to approve a continuance to next month's January 16 meeting.
No move, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Feth. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now moving on, and I'll take the rest of them in order as they appear on our agenda. The first one being PLN 19-032Z, and I would advise the applicants on all of the cases in front of us tonight that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a majority of the commissioners present. Anything less than 4 votes is a denial, and the applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of more planning commissioners members being present if they so desire. PLN 1932Z is a petition for a zone change of part of Lot 8, Block 1, Standard Oil subdivision located at 1551 South Poplar Street from R2, 1-unit residential, to C2, general business. The applicant being Jess Edward Snell. Do we have a staff report, Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application has been received for a requested zone change of 1551 South Poplar Street from R2, 1-unit residential, to C2, general business. The property is approximately 5,300 square feet in size, located mid-block, and is immediately adjacent to property zoned R2 on the north, south, and east, and C2 to the west. Land uses in the area consist of both single-family residential and commercial. Access to the property is via South Poplar Street or secondarily from an alley in the rear. The applicant's representative has stated that the reason for the requested rezone is to allow for the construction of multiple dwelling units on the property, which is not permitted under the current single-family zoning, but would be allowed if the property were zoned C2 general business. Section 1712-170 of the municipal code requires that staff review zone changes in context with the approved comprehensive land use plan and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as to how the zone change is either supported or not. The Generation Casper Comprehensive Land Use Plan provides a future land use plan map, which is found in Chapter 4 on page 4-26 of the plan. The FLU is an illustrative map that identifies the physical distribution of land uses and forms the basis for future zoning and land use regulations. The subject property is located in an area along South Poplar Street designated as a neighborhood center. Page 4-32 of the plan provides general characteristics of the areas designated as neighborhood centers, which typically include low-scale commercial uses and supporting multifamily residential. Chapter 3 of the plan provides principles and goals, and a couple of those have been included in your staff report that may or may not be applicable in this zone change. In 2016, the city approved a council-initiated zone change of all the properties along South Poplar Street from CY Avenue to Collins Drive to C2 General Business. Given that South Poplar Street is such a heavily used collector arterial street, there had been limited interest in the redevelopment or investment in that area. The C2 General Business Zoning District has become the city's primary mixed-use classification, and it was the city's intent that the rezone of the area would alleviate some of the perceived regulatory barriers that may have discouraged reinvestment in the area in the past. Similarly, single-family only zoning along South Poplar Street south of CY Avenue may cause the area to struggle to attract reinvestment moving forward. In 2016, the property located 2 lots to the north of the subject property was rezoned from R2 to C2 as the formerly vacant convenience store at that location transitioned to a new use, an eye clinic, and expanded the commercial zoning farther to the south. It is likely that the corridor will continue to transition to include more mixed-use land uses over time, which is consistent with the planned land use for the area designated in the future land use plan. For the Commission's reference, I've included 51 uses that are permitted by right in the C2 zoning district in your staff report. I would note that staff received 1 letter of opposition, which has been included for the Commission's review. And I have 6 exhibits, Mr. Chairman. A, petition for a zone change. B, vicinity map. C, public notice sent to the Star Tribune. D, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet. E, letter of opposition from Sue Cathcart, 1617 South Poplar Street. And F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1932Z. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 1932Z please come forward and explain the application?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. The issue with the microphones, as I've been told, is that it doesn't pick up for the broadcast that goes out on the cable channel. Even though we can hear everything fine, yeah, no, I think if you just speak normally, directed towards the mic, I think everything would be fine.
Good. Commissioners and Chairman, most important thing is that I represent Mr. Snell. He's out of town at the present time. I'm working with him in regarding this zoning change. Big thing about it right now is that the application is we're planning on doing some multifamily, like a duplex or a triplex. Nothing else. Most important thing is we're going to be changing, because I don't know if you've ever seen the property before it was purchased. It was a rundown, single family, and if you walked into it, you had to hang on to something because you could have fallen through the floor. It was a disaster. So we did buy it. Most important thing is we're going to put something delicate and good for the property. I had 3 exhibits that I gave to Craig Collins to show that I have never broken any of the rules of the zoning and planning have done, or the commissioner, as far as all my zoning changes. I've torn down several homes, and I've added other additions to make the property, the fill-ins in Casper, whether it's a single-family, multifamily, or whatever, including a multifamilies in North Casper. I've torn down on the center and K Street, an old house that needed to be torn down, and I put a small fourplex in it. And I put several other ones in North Casper, on St. John, and on North Grant, and I enhanced the neighborhood. Creates more value for the neighbors. Most important thing, that's what our plans are doing, is to enhance the property, not leave it like it was, and detriment to the neighborhood. Are there any questions of me, since I'm going to be helping him on Mr. Snell's behalf? And
just for clarification, the house that was there one time is no longer there. It's been torn down. That's what my.
And I am Dennis Langdon, 6250 Verde Court, Casper.
Okay. Are there questions from the commission for Mr. Langdon? Mr. Davis.
Mr. Chairman. Where's your major point of access going to be to the lots?
Most of the time, right now, planning is parking lot in the back off the alley.
You're going to exit and enter the property from the alley?
We'll have an exit from the street, but our parking purpose will be off the alley.
And you'll exit back onto back onto Poplar Street, is that correct?
As one, but we're going to have the parking for them to park their cars off the alley.
Okay.
That was the whole purpose, because it is close to a very busy intersection. We understand that. For the safety of them and others, our planning is to have parking off the back. Like my other units, for example, like over on K and Center, I had them off the grid because that's a very tight corner.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Langdon from the commissioners? Thank you.
Mr. Langdon?
Oh, Commissioner Wingeter.
I guess you answered my question. It's just, it's such a narrow lot, and that's what I'm concerned. What kind of a building are you planning on building? I heard you say couple units.
It's going to be, for example, like one unit, two units on top. We're going to make it primarily like a triplex, a small, because right now the demand is for 1 and 2 bedroom units.
Are you planning on having garages underneath the units?
No.
I mean, with the living quarters on top?
Living quarters on top.
Okay, thank you.
But the parking, it's kind of like the fourplex I'm going back to over on K and Center. That was 25 feet wide by 140 feet
Yeah.
long. And I made it work. Worked out good.
You have any pictures of you?
Oh, I thought I sent them to you.
They're on my computer, which isn't working.
Oh,
Hard copies of.
I did not, because your computer doesn't work. Oh, okay. But I have pictures on his laptop that doesn't work now
Okay.
of what I just brought up. In other words, over on Center and K Street, I have torn down a house over on the 600 block of Jackson, and I put in 3 units over there. And then I also have done a lot of things infill with multifamily, like over on Fairdale, that backs up to Beverly, all those units. And then on Conwell, infill, where people were angry because I took away their fun playground area. And I filled that in with very good-looking units, and worked with the fire department to work with them as far as the traffic for the fire department. My job is, I'm here to enhance neighborhoods, and that's all I've been doing lately.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns?
Vice Chairman Hine.
How many parking spaces do you plan on site?
Well, it's 1.2 per unit, so I've got to have at least 4.
So that pretty much eats up the whole back end
Pretty much.
off that alley. Are you going to pave that alley?
No. It kind of defeats the purpose of getting something affordable.
Mr. Langland?
Sir.
Dennis, did
Mr.
you,
Winger.
did you purchase that from the person on the south side of you that, or?
No. That, I purchased that from Laurel Lundstrom, brokerage house one.
But I was just wondering if the person on the south side of you owned that land at one time? Or you have no idea?
Laurel Lundstrom owned it for a lot of years. Over 20 years.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis.
All right. Thank you.
As required by state law, we will invite people to speak in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1932Z?
Good evening. My name is Bruce Dangle. I live at 1617 South Poplar. My wife and I own the house there. There is some concern on my part about the construction of this area here. I did some research in 2013. That intersection, that was the newest bunch of effort that I could find. That intersection at Poplar and CY was considered the third worst in the city of Casper and the fourth in the state of Wyoming as far as accidents and trouble and traffic flow. The Casper Star Tribune at that time indicated that there was not a real issue or a way to fix any of that, and that the traffic is going to continue to get worse. The gentleman who owned the restaurant across the street, Karen and Jim's, in 2003, at that time said that that was the second worst intersection in the city of Casper. And living in our house at 1617 South Poplar, we've lived there for pretty close to 25 years. During that time, there was a time that you could just back out of your driveway any time in the morning to go to work, anytime you felt like it, no big deal. Now, right now, if you was to get out in the morning to go to work, or to go any place before 7 o'clock in the morning up until about 9:30 in the morning, there's a window of about 2 seconds where you can get out. The traffic flow is that contagious. The alley from which the former speaker spoke about is a very narrow alley right there. And you can see it in the picture up there behind that empty building. There's a garage, 2 garages on that alley, and a fence. And in order to swing into there, it's going to be a really tough cut from what I can see. Maybe not. I don't know how they've got that planned, but that's my concern is that getting out of that alley, if you're going to park all your vehicles, 4 vehicles behind them like they've said that they're going to, getting out of that alley onto Poplar in the morning, in the evening, during the daytime, the entrance to that alley is the correct length, width, for that alley area, according to the zoning factions, but it's not in the right place. If you take your turn into that alley from going east on CY, you have to cut it pretty close to where there's some trees and some rocks and some other stuff right there, and you're within inches of cutting that alley right in, and the garbage can is sitting right there. According to the newspapers, the Casper Star Tribune in 2014, there are an average of 27,000 people that use CY Avenue every day. There's an average of 14,000 people who use that street coming off of Poplar to CY or back up towards the mountain, whichever. That very same article mentioned that by 2027, there's going to be another average of 5,000 people who use CY Avenue. That's addition to the 27, so we're talking, what, 32,000 people more or during that time? On Poplar Street, there's going to be another 6,000 on top of the 14,000. That's 20,000 people that's going to use that road every day. My concern is it's extremely tough now to get on to Poplar from the private area to join CY or go further south or north on Poplar. Putting a dwelling there is not going to be a bad thing in my mind, But getting anybody off of the alley or off the street is gonna be a really terrible, terrible situation. It's not gonna be an easy thing to traffic flow on. In 2016 and 2017, the police department mentioned at that time that they were very concerned about the business of that intersection, and that they had decided that they was going to ramp up their term, the police presence in that area. Now, there's 4 signs that say crash reduction area ahead. The first of this year, when they put those signs up, they patrolled that area for about 2 weeks. They stopped, on my count alone, on one day, they stopped 12 vehicles between 7 o'clock and 8:30 in the morning, trying to get traffic to slow down. They're not taking care of that area so much anymore. What they are, the signs are still there, but they're not doing as much. So I'm concerned again about the traffic flow. I talked to Jim Edgeworth. He sold a house over on Cedar Street approximately 2 months ago that was, they got $220,000 off of that house. It's approximately the same size as our house is. I'm concerned that putting up a multiple family building like what they're talking about here, probably not going to decrease their value, but that whole area has not had any residential building in 35 years or more, at least. If you count Walgreens, the tear down of the motels and all the other stuff over there, that's one thing. But residential homes in that area have not had any kind of building going in that period of time. I don't think the water demand is going to change too much. This whole, a number of years back, they put in a bigger water line down the center of the street. But at our house, even with the bigger flow of the water line and the housing that goes on further up towards the mountain on Poplar, the water reduction is extremely apparent in the evenings. 2 more houses on, or 2 more dwellings on that house? I don't know. Maybe it's going to decrease it even some more. Fire zone and response times is not going to change a whole lot. Fire department up at the top of the hill. But with what has been said already tonight, I'm really concerned about the traffic flow. Getting out of our house is an incredibly bad thing. Not going to be able to stop it by any means, but we are extremely concerned over how this is going to be directed towards everything around us. There are 9 houses from between Poplar and 17th Street, which is the first crossover street going east and west. 4 of those are homeowners. One of those homeowners has got their property for sale and they'll be moving out. The one at the corner by 17th Street is just undergone foreclosure. The rest are all rentals. So we're just going to add more and more rentals to this area. What's that going to do to my property value down the road? I understand that Casper needs housing, but I hope that they consider all of this before they start building. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me. May I ask
Commissioner
a
Frank.
question?
Mr. Dingle, do you have a question? We do have a question for you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
At the location that we're talking, there was at one time, what was there in the past?
There was a house on that property that sat at the end of the alley, right next to the alley. It was probably a single development housing area, just a little house. It's probably maybe 600-700 square feet. The people who had that property they came in from Poplar and parked on that, drove into their street headed east in front of their house. Then when they redid the intersection there, the width of the street increased right in front of that house and took off probably 25 feet in front of their place. And up until the time that they left, it was extremely hard for them to get out of the house. But there hasn't been anybody living there for up until 5 years or thereabouts, up until the last summer when it was tore down.
So is there any parking at all along Poplar Street there? There is not.
You can park in front of your house, And that's not really a good thing because I parked in front of my house. There's what is known as a parkway. It goes from about the corner up to about halfway up the block, and it's city-owned. It's the property line that goes from the gutter to the sidewalk. And we park our vehicles, most of us park our vehicles there, but if you do park on the street, I parked there several times before I started parking on the parkway. My vehicle got hit 6 times. Taillights, the whole side of the vehicle, knocked mirrors off. Even now, there are people who come past the parkway, and if it's busy, there's 3 or 4 cars parked there waiting for the light to change. They'll go up on the sidewalk and come down in front of the other vehicles to try and get past it. Parking is really tough, unless you have a driveway facing that direction.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wingeter.
Sir, what, in your opinion, with this lot, and as narrow as it is, what would you, in your opinion, what should go in that lot?
I'd put a park in there.
Huh?
I'd put a park in there. It's a pretty narrow little lot. It's not big enough, in my opinion, to put a house in there. You can't put a trailer house in there. Even a double dwelling, an apartment duplex, whatever the term you want to use. I just turn it into a park. It would be the simplest thing in the world because it is so narrow and the street section is cut off at the front of it. It's going to be extremely tough to make anything out of it that's going to be valuable, in my mind.
But, sir, is your property just as narrow?
Yes, yes it is. We have one level, one lot on our place. When our house was built in 1924, and whoever built that house, they figured that one lot was going to be enough. Our lot is just as narrow as theirs is. And we have property line on the south side is about 3.5 feet from our house to the property line. And on the north side is approximately, from the side of the house to the property line is about another 3 feet on that side. So there's not a whole lot of space either way, side to side.
And where do you park?
We have a driveway in front. I park on the parkway out in front. When the city redid all of that, put in the water line and all that in there, I asked them to put in cement on the parkway, so there's a parking way that I have in the back. Our backyard is set enough in the back that I can park a couple of vehicles in the alley off that side. But we have a big area to swing in there there's no fence in there compared to what there is down the street.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else got any questions? I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to PLN 1932Z? There being no others to speak in favor of or against, I now declare the public hearing closed and will entertain a motion to approve and forward to council with the due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 1932Z.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move we approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Discussion. Vice Chairman Hein.
My only concern is that whole area is single housing. And I don't have a problem with more commercial being next to CY and all, but this would be the only place that would have a multiple unit dwelling that I know of for the next 3 or 4 blocks up. And it seems to me that the east side is all single family housing, and the north side is where a lot of the apartments and more commercial start to happen. I'm just concerned that from a planning standpoint, once we start digging into this this area, if it's infiltrated with multiple family housing, and C2 also allows a lot of other uses like vet clinics and stuff like that. I'm just concerned that all of a sudden it starts to get commercial and it starts to kind of eat up into this neighborhood. And all of a sudden, I know I don't like in my neighborhood, I wouldn't want a multiple living complex next door to me. And I wouldn't want a vet clinic there either, for noise and extra traffic, and it's kind of in a way, a nice, it's sleepy, it's kind of sleepy, it's a sleepy little hollow from Poplar East, but not on Poplar is the only problem. And getting on and off Poplar is a challenge, especially during the busy hours. And I'm just concerned that we start eating into this residential area, and then all of a sudden, the properties behind them, those values would go down to me as they slowly get taken over by the commercial. And right now, it's really a nice neighborhood to walk. And I'm concerned that if a commercial gets in there and takes it over, it won't be that anymore. Because that's one of our few walkable communities. It's got the big trees and the nice parkways, so that you're not walking right next to the street and all of that. And I know that neighborhood very well. I grew up about 3 blocks from there. So I do know that neighborhood. And I know my folks used to own a house on that same block. And I know I'd definitely be concerned about my values if all of a sudden, because once this happens, one C2 gets in there, more will happen. And again, I don't have a problem with it coming off of CY right on that corner, because I don't think houses work there. And it should be something. And anyway, that's my concern, is it'll start eating into a neighborhood, and then the next thing you know, everything's gonna start to get really run down. And right now, there's kind of a good mix of kind of classes, and not that it's really nice along Poplar Street, but it's kind of a buffer, and it kind of has offers for, cheaper housing there, and it kind of gets more expensive as you step in. So that would be my concern.
Okay.
Because right now, again, it's walkable and it's really connected, and you can get to a lot of stuff from there.
Thanks. Further comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
I have mixed emotions, but I'm eventually going to have to make up my mind one way or the other. I know I second it only to get it on the floor. But if I could be guaranteed that there's going to be no exit or entrance off of Poplar, and it's all going to be used in the, people are going to exit and entrance in the park.
Well, Commissioner Wingeter, I'd have to say right now, the planning and zoning can't dictate that on us. This is a request to rezone the property, so we wouldn't be in a position to put any conditions on whether or not it went with the rezoning.
But for my own mind, it would be nice to know.
I appreciate that.
So.
Well, I guess my thoughts on it.
Can I ask
Oh,
this?
certainly.
Is a building, Mr. Langdon, is a building going to be up close to Poplar, or is it going to be back?
Parking will be only in the back, and the building would be moved up to the front, correct?
I guess my thoughts on it is that, as I looked at it, there's no doubt it's a transition zone between commercial and residential, and it's which way you go. There's arguments can be made for and against it. As I looked at it, to me, it complies with the Generation Casper Comprehensive Use Plan to make that compatible with the areas around it to the north and to the west as C2. To me, it fit with the future land use plan, so I didn't see a big of an issue in terms of what it would do to surrounding property values. I think it would just as likely could, if we were to look at property values, which we don't, I think you could make arguments that it could go either way, and that a properly constructed multifamily building there, development could actually enhance the neighborhood. So, but I'm not in a position to make that argument, but I'm saying that I see it as a possibility. So that's where I'm coming down on it. Further comments from the commission? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the application to go from R2 to C2. And with that, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Commissioners Davis, Hine, Pfeffer, and Frank voting nay, and the motion fails. Only Commissioner King and Wingeter voted yea.
Okay, so with that, it remains R2. Is that our understanding?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The zoning stops with the Planning and Zoning Commission in the case of a denial.
All right. Thank you, and thank you both for coming forward. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, PLN 1933C, which also was continued from November, is a petition for a conditional use permit to construct an oversized detached 40-foot by 56-foot garage, an accessory building in excess of 1,500 square feet, maximum size permitted, and with all wall heights in excess of the 12-foot maximum on lots 11 and 12, Block 24, Nelson's Addition, located at 1130 North David Street, the applicant being Don Haney. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property owner of 1130 North David Street has applied for a conditional use permit to allow for the construction of an oversized detached garage. The property consists of 2 platted lots together totaling over 15,000 square feet in area. The property is zoned R5 mixed residential and is surrounded by properties zoned R6, R3, and R5. Land uses in the area are a mix of industrial and residential. Section 1712-121F4 of the Municipal Code limits the size of a detached accessory structure to 15% of the lot area, not to exceed 1,500 square feet. The code requires that a conditional use permit must be granted in order to exceed that limitation. The proposed building would be 2,240 square feet in size, or about 15% of the available area of the property. Section 1712-121G of the Municipal Code requires the issuance of a conditional use permit in order to exceed 12-foot exterior wall heights on detached accessory structures. The applicant would like to construct wall heights of 14 feet in order to accommodate a taller door for larger vehicles. The intent of the limitations on residential accessory building sizes is to ensure that the structures are in keeping with the character of the residential neighborhood. Additional requirements of the code address siding, peak heights, and roof pitch in furtherance of this intent. The applicant has indicated that the siding of the structure will be residential lap-type siding and the roof will be pitched. Staff is unaware of the existence of any similar conditional use permits that have been issued in the surrounding area. Mr. Chairman, we have not received any public comments on this proposal, and staff has included a single recommended condition of approval, and I'll go ahead and read that. Pursuant to Section 1712-240I of the Municipal Code, the conditional use permit shall be exercised and all conditions shall be met within 1 year of the date of approval, or the conditional use permit shall become null and void. And I have 5 exhibits to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman. A conditional use application. Map of the 300-foot notification zone is B. C is legal notice sent to the Star Tribune. D, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet. And E, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through E are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1933Z. Again, the hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and any other applicable state laws, period. I would ask those individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 1933C come forward and explain the application, please?
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
My name's Don Haney. I live at 1130 North David. I've lived there for 13 years now. Plan on sticking around. My wife and I own a painting business here in town, residential painting and fence painting. We've been in business for a little over 7 years, and we've been running the business out of our house, and we've outgrown it, and we need a place to where we can park our vehicles inside in the winter, store materials, maintain our vehicles, etc. So we just like to utilize the lot that is next to our house, that is tied in with our house, and be able to further our business and such in Casper here.
Mr. Haney, I would ask you this, in staff's report to the commission, they did have one recommended condition that the conditional use would be valid for 1 year. Were you aware of that, and do you have any issues or problems with that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I was aware, and I don't have any issues.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions from the commission for Mr. Haney?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Frank?
The garage that you're proposing to build, how, as far as height-wise in the neighborhood, is it going to be approximately the same height as the storage units next door to that?
No, it'll be taller than the storage unit next door.
How much taller then?
The peak height will probably be about twice as high, because they're just little
Right.
8-foot storage units. In comparison to my house, which has, I think 12-foot sidewalls and a gabled roof, it's gonna be probably 4 foot taller. It just kind of guesstimating. I was out there trying to measure the other day in the snow, just so that I'd have an answer on how tall it was. There is a house that is across the street that was built. It's a single-story house, but it was, what I heard, when they poured the basement, they poured it too high, so it will stick actually above my garage. It just the way the land falls, it'll be that building will be a little taller.
So as far as in the neighborhood, this garage will be taller than some, but not as tall as all of them. So
It'll be probably taller than most, but not the tallest in the neighborhood, I think.
Thank you.
Further questions from the commission for Mr. Haney? Commissioner Vice Chairman Hine?
So that new garage is basically for commercial use?
It will be, we'll run our business out of it. Our business isn't necessarily conducted at the building. We usually go to people's houses and paint. It'll be used more for storage. My truck and trailer that I drive around all the time is a little over 40 foot long. And I'd like to be able to pull it in the wintertime, so I'm not continually having to unload all of our freezable materials and then load them all back up like I've been doing for the last 6 years. So that's one of the reasons why we asked for so deep, is so that I could get back into the building and keep things warm. Right now, we average in the wintertime 2 or 3 people working with us. In the summertime, there's more, but we don't do that much work at our place, so there's not going to be any increase in traffic that any more than for the last 7 years that we've been painting. You know, occasionally we'll have our employees park at our house or our shop when we're working out of town and they're riding with me or whatever. But it's not going to be like a retail store or anything like that. It's going to be mostly for storage and working on our vehicles. Occasionally we might spray some cabinet doors or something inside of it. But we've been doing that in our garage attached to our house for the last couple of years. So like I said, it's not going to really increase any traffic.
Further questions for Mr. Haney from Commission? Thank you, sir. Again, as required by state law, we will invite people to comment either in favor of or in opposition to any public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1933C? There being no others to speak for or against the case, I now declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wingeter.
I'll be happy to make a motion to approve this PLN 19033C.
Okay, I would ask you, Commissioner Wingeter, In staff's report, they gave us 2 reasons, 6 findings, and 1 recommended condition. And is your motion to recognize and accept all of the findings and reasons within the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wingeter. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Feth. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
down in that area, it's in the area south of, north of Roosevelt School, and over a couple blocks over, there's another building over there that's kind of high, and it's an older building, and somebody's working on kitchens out of it. So I think this area is this building will enhance the area.
Well, I would echo that observation. From what I've seen, I think this area of Casper sees a lot of mixed use of the property, and I don't see this as being incompatible with the immediate surrounding area nor the general nature of the neighborhood. So I would support the application also. Further comments or questions from the commission?
Well, I have one.
Vice Chairman Hine.
My only concern is everything around it's residential. And basically this, the new garage or shop is for commercial use. I'm only thinking about the people to the north of it. It'll be blocking out some of the natural light and everything, and blocking some views to the mountain, but that's going to happen anyway to a certain extent. But to allow 2 more feet, it seems like it's wanting to be commercial, and we limit it at 12 feet for residential use. So here we are, we're going to 14 feet, and that's more commercial use. And I don't know, I'm just having a problem fitting a commercial use in a residential area.
Okay, and from my observation, the area immediately north is already single storage units, so it's
Right next door, yeah.
right. So I
Oh,
again,
excuse me, I meant to the west.
or to
Sorry.
the west.
Yeah, all the trailers and everything.
Okay.
There's quite a few people there.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner
I'm
Feth.
not sure who answered this, but it looks like the building just to the north of it, it would be a commercial building. It's very long, so. It's a storage building. It's a storage building too, okay.
Storage units.
Well, I'm just kind of having problems with the height part, I guess. Just because, again, you're blocking out natural light, and that's why we have these setbacks and everything. And again, to fit it in residential, to me, it's 12 feet. And once you go 14, 16, you're affecting the areas. And I know if I were one of the folks living behind that, to the west, I don't think I'd like looking at the back of a building. If it were taller, I'd like it better if it were shorter, just because it lets more light in, and during the winter, the direct rays really matter. And again, you're getting at that height where it's kind of getting into more commercial to me.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? Hearing none, we have a motion and second. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda will be PLN 1938R. Again, I would advise the applicant it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a majority of the commission members present, and anything less than 4 votes would be considered a denial. Applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of all the planning commissioner members being present if they so desire. PLN 1938R is a petition to vacate and replat lots 1 and 2 of the White Dog Addition, a portion of Lot 9, all of Lot 10, and a portion of Lot 11, Block 10, of the Pineview Meadows subdivision, number 1, as White Dog Addition number 2, comprising 0.61 acres, more or less, located at 454 and 504 South Sun Drive. The applicants being Mitchell and Dora Skogard, and Rex Evan and Sheila Evans. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application has been received to replat 2 properties located at 454 and 504 South Sun Drive to create a new subdivision, the White Dog Addition number 2. The properties involved are zoned R2 and are surrounded by properties zoned the same on all sides. The purpose of the replat is to correct inaccuracies in the legal description and ownership represented on a previous plat, the White Dog Addition. The proposed White Dog Addition number 2 shows a total of 2 lots. Proposed lot 1 will be approximately 10,558 square feet in area, and lot 2 will be almost 16,000 square feet in area. The minimum lot size required in an R2 zoning district is 4,000 square feet. Staff has not included any suggested conditions or of approval with regard to this replat. However, should the Planning Commission wish, conditions may be included in the recommendation. Staff has not received any public comments on this case. Of 6 exhibits, A is the replat application, B, vicinity map of the 300-foot notification zone, C, copy of the plat, D, legal notice sent to the Star Tribune, E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners, and F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. And let's see, before I get to my comment, would the person or persons representing case PLN 1938R please come forward and explain the application?
My name is Doris Skogard. I'm at 454 South Sun. This is a replat of a plat that was done in 2011, but not totally completed properly. And we're just replatting it at this time to get all the legal boundaries and everything correct.
Okay, and that was going to be my question to make sure I understood that too, so. Okay. Questions for Ms. Skogard from the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wingeter.
Ms. Van, so I noticed one, I drove by it the other day, I don't know. One lot is encroaching in the other lot, is that the problem? Did they find it on the title or?
No, we purchased 11 feet from Mr. and Mrs. Evans. And at the time, the city said we couldn't just get a quick claim deed to do that. We had to replat the whole thing with the White Dog subdivision.
Okay.
So when the surveyor did that, he improperly abandoned all of Lot 9, which did not belong to us or Mr. Evans. It belongs to my next door neighbor. And a few other errors were made. He did not completely plat the Evans lot either. The surveyor didn't. So we're actually just redoing everything that was done in 2011. There's no encroachment on anything. We purchased 11 feet from the large lot south of us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Further questions for Ms. Skogard from the commission? Thank you. Again, as required by state law, we'll invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1938R? There being no others to speak for or against the case, I now declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion to approve and forward a due pass recommendation to the City Council to deny or to table case PLN 1938R, the replat.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. The last public hearing, last item on our public hearing part of the agenda is PLN 1941C. Again, I've advised the applicants that it takes a majority of 4 votes to carry any motion and not just a simple majority. And if anything less than 4 votes would be considered a denial, and the applicants can postpone until next month the application in anticipation of more planning commission members being present if you so desire. PLN 1941C is a petition for a conditional use permit to expand an existing home-based childcare from its current limit of 8 children to a maximum of 15 children on Lot 38, Longview Number 3 Edition, located at 4121 East 8th Street. The applicant being Casper Rental Agency and Suzanne St. Pierre, doing business as Pitter Patter Playhouse LLC. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An application has been received for a conditional use permit to expand an existing daycare from a current capacity of 8 to a proposed capacity of 15, located at 4121 East 8th Street. The subject property is zoned R1 residential estate and is located in a single-family residential neighborhood directly west of the Verta James School at a public park. The property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of East 8th Street and Carriage Lane. A family child care center zoning review is defined in the zoning ordinance as a family child care center in which care is provided for not more than 15 unrelated children for part of a day in the home of the provider. Any child care facility with a capacity over 8 children requires the approval of a conditional use permit by the Planning and Zoning Commission in the R1 zoning district. The hours of operation will be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The child care provider has been in operation at this location with a maximum capacity of 8 children since June 6th of 2019. The issue before the Planning and Zoning Commission is whether the proposed conditional use permit meets the 6 parameters and conditions listed above in the code compliance section of your staff report. The property has a 2-car driveway that can accommodate at least 2 off-street parking spaces, meeting the city's minimum parking requirements for a child care of this size. Staff has included a recommended condition of approval that requires the applicant to leave the 2 existing parking spaces open for use by daycare customers during the hours when the daycare is in operation. Staff has also included a recommended condition of approval regarding signage. As is the case with all home occupations, including family child care centers, freestanding signage is prohibited. The Casper Municipal Code allows home occupations to have one non-illuminated sign no larger than 1 square foot in area affixed to the home. It is staff's opinion that the proposed expansion of the child care from 8 to 15 children will not noticeably increase traffic volume or congestion or cause a traffic hazard in the area. The Department of Family Services handles licensing, evaluates the adequacy of the area within the house and yard for play and other activities, and regulates the nature and quality of the care provided. DFS, as well as the City County Health Department and the City Fire Department, have all provided letters of compliance for the child care. Based on the information provided by DFS, there are 3 other licensed child care facilities located within a half mile of the subject property. Mr. Chairman, we are providing 4 suggested conditions should the Planning Commission decide to approve this conditional use permit. I'll go ahead and read those. First, the applicant shall maintain a minimum of 2 open off-street paved parking spaces for use by daycare customers to load and unload children at off-street during the hours when the daycare is in operation. Second, pursuant to Section 1712-140A2 of the Municipal Code, signage for all home-based childcare shall be limited to only signage that is non-illuminated, attached flush with a dwelling, and not exceeding 1 square foot in area. Third, the Family Child Care Center is approved as a secondary accessory use of the property. The primary use of the property shall remain single-family residential, which is a permitted use in the R1 zoning district. Therefore, the operator of the Family Child Care Center must live at the subject property. If the operator of the Family Child Care Center is found to not be residing on the premises, the conditional use permit may be immediately revoked by the city pursuant to Section 1712-240J. And fourth, pursuant to Section 1712-240M3 of the Municipal Code, the conditional use permit shall be granted to the child care provider and shall not attach to the land. The conditional use permit shall not be transferred from one location to another and shall not be transferable from one child care provider to another. Mr. Chairman, we received 2 letters of opposition, which have been provided for the commission's reference, and I have 7 exhibits. A is the conditional use permit application, B, vicinity map, C, legal notice sent to the Star Tribune, D, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet, E, letter of opposition from 866 Carriage Lane, F, letter of opposition from 4095 East 8th Street, and G, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins, and exhibits A through G are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1941C. The hearing again will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and applicable laws. I would ask the individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. And would the person or persons representing case PLN 1941C come forward? And you're already come forward, and please identify yourself.
Nancy Pierre, I live at 4121 East 8th, and my daughter and I operate the child care center there. I live in the finished basement, and the entire upper floor is the daycare center. And we currently have, we're working with about 12 families right now, but we don't have, we're running about 6 to 8 kids in the house at all the time. We'd like to increase that to about 10 to 12 kids, but there is, if we cannot do it unless we get the permit. I can't go over on, 8 kids is my limit.
Okay.
But we're trying to run 2 households off of the income that comes out of there.
Ms. St. Pierre, let me ask you this. In staff's report to the commission, were included 4 recommended conditions. Or were you aware of those conditions, and do you have any issues or problems with any of them?
Not at all. I have the 2-car garage, which is where we keep our cars in the garage. There's 2 spots outside of that garage for parking. I also have a shed at the right on the same street. There's a shed with 2 paved off-street parkings in front of that shed. So there's plenty of parking. We're right across the street from an elementary school. The need is there. We've only been open since June. And I'm pushing that 8 often enough to where, and getting calls to exceed that I can't accept the money on because I cannot exceed the limit of 8. But it's a brand new business. If somebody calls and wants their kid, I need to be able to take the children. I'm trying to start a business.
Okay. But you're comfortable with what was recommended by the staff in their conditions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. St. Pierre from Commission?
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
What's your hours of operation?
Open at 6, close at 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That said, we are very flexible with our brand new business, and we're very flexible with all our families. So if they cannot make it back by 6, I will certainly keep the child till they can come back.
Mr. Chairman?
8 o'clock is kind of our latest, 8 o'clock.
Commissioner Winkler.
Yes, ma'am. 6 to 6. But what about if do they come around some families? Do they bring their kids around other times of the day?
Their kids are being dropped off and picked up during all those hours of the day. Some kids come.
So they come 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
Children that come in from 6 to 4. I have kids that come in 8 to 5, 8 to 6.
Yeah.
I have kids that come in 7 to 3. I have kids that will come in, they just need to run errands. Can I drop the kids off for a couple hours? And those are the families that are getting turned away now because I'm at 8. I cannot take those couple extra kids, even though I have 2 providers in the house, which is double the number of 1 provider per 8 kids. So we have 2 providers on 8 kids right now.
Okay. Further questions for Ms. St. Pierre from the Commission?
I have one other question.
Commissioner Davis.
I'm concerned about the traffic at the corner of the intersection there. Yet, the times, I live not too far from there, and I go there, and it's a busy intersection. that whole street is busy, especially when it begins school and when it ends the school,
Exactly.
bumper to bumper there.
It's a busy street. Carriage is busy, and that four-way stop that's right in front of our house is a busy intersection. There is a lot of traffic flow connected with the school, so in the morning from 7:30 to 8:30, that's a very busy place. And none of my parents can park right on 8th Street, which is the front walkway. They all have to park in the driveway on Carriage. And like I said, that the optional 2 extra spots, which are on our property, paved, off-street parking, are available. Right now, the parents doing the pickup and drop-offs will block off that. It hasn't been a problem yet. It might be. If I go to 15 and I have a parent who says, I can't get in to pick up my child, at that point, the resource officer at the school recommended the construction cones. And we have those up now. I block off our driveway and I block off the yellow fire lane in front of the house. Because the parents picking up the school kids will block our driveways, It is what it is. They're trying to pick up their kids and go home. I understand. And I generally don't have any trouble. My parents that pick up at that time, I have 2, know that they do not expect to park on 8th Street and come in the front door. They expect to park in the garage access on Carriage. That said, everybody else parks on 8th Street right in front and never have any trouble.
Okay. Further questions? Thank you. As again is required by state law, we will invite people to comment either in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak either in favor of or in opposition to case PLN 1941C? There being no others to speak either in favor of or against, I now declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion to approve, to deny, or to table case PLN 1941C.
Mr. Chairman, I'll propose that we approve PLN 19-041-C with all conditions and requirements.
Okay, and just for clarification, staff's report and recommendation was included 2 reasons, 6 findings,
Yeah,
and then
all
the
of
4
the above.
conditions, all of the above.
I don't have that in my note.
Okay, I did read that correctly, the findings and the reasons. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Frank. Discussion.
I have one comment on the report. On the recommended motion, it has the wrong case number.
Oh, my apology.
That's it.
Good eye.
Liz just made a note of that.
Good eye, Susan.
It's been nice knowing you.
Oh, I've never made a mistake.
You can use us all for references if that means anything. All right. Okay, with the motion and also seconded is to approve PLN 1941C. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
I drive by that area quite a bit. And as much as I want to help the ladies out, and I know how tough it is for small businesses nowadays, that is a very, I can't explain how busy that intersection is with Verta James School, and then a lot of the people at the mall, not that there's that much business at the mall anymore, but a lot of the people at the mall, they're supposed to turn on Wyoming Boulevard, but they don't. They come straight over. A lot of them. I've seen that many times. I'm just afraid, and there's only 2 parking spots in that driveway. Maybe they can get 3 in. I just worry about it, so I'm going to have to vote no on this.
Okay.
In opposition.
Commissioner Frank.
having dropped my granddaughter off at Verta James for years and years, it is a busy street, but I'm under the impression that the children at the daycare won't be playing in the street. And there is that extra parking, so they really have 4 places to park. And I do understand that people block that all the time. I think I may have done that on occasion, because it's busy. Here's when it's busy. It's busy when school starts. It's busy when school ends. So, and school, it's probably a half an hour after school is over, and maybe an hour before school starts. So it's not all day, and there is a fenced yard, so any playing by the children will not be in the streets, but probably in the fenced yard. So.
Mr. Chairman, I
Commissioner
understand,
Wingeter.
Ms. Frank, but I'll tell you what, I in no way wanted to emphasize or mean that kids are going to play in the street.
Okay, I understand.
Just so you know that.
understand.
But I have heard from some people up the street that in their opposition, besides these 2 letters here. But whatever the board decides is okay with, but I have to vote no on this, my opinion.
Further comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, maybe to stay away from that ex parte communication, maybe Mr. Wingerter ought to share it with the rest of us, what he discussed with a neighbor.
Yeah, what the other neighbors have said.
Okay, what they voiced their concern about the traffic across from the school. That's some 2 main concerns I heard. And just the other day at Meals on Wheels, they were talking about it. That was a topic of, at the table I was sitting at Meals on Wheels. A lady lives up the street, and I could tell you her name, but I won't mention it here. But she was concerned, and I go by there all the time. I deliver Meals on Wheels in that area too. And I want to help the ladies out. I'm all for small business. And that's, you know, if the board wishes that it passes, that's, I mean, what can I do? But I just have concerns about it myself.
Mr. Chairman, another point is, being so close to that school, it'd be really handy to have kids go over there without impacting any traffic at all. As long as they get across the street safely, and I assume you have a nice big fence in the backyard.
And the school has crossing guards too, so.
Yeah.
I'd electrify it to keep them all in there. I'm just kidding. They'll figure it out and get over it.
Yeah.
I would suspect that's a condition of approval. We're not authorized to go down.
Sorry.
Okay, further comments or issues from the commission before we take a vote? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Wingeter voting nay, all the other commissioners voting yea, the motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner
I
Wingeter.
just want to wish you the best of luck, even though I voted against it, and I'm sure you'll be very successful and whatever. Thank you.
Okay, now we're at the point in the agenda where I kind of take liberty with what's left on the order. I would go straight to our council actions and first to ask our city council liaison, Commissioner Hopkins, if you Okay, you need to, looks like maybe reboot our microphones.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. All right, we're back into business. Councilman Hopkins, if you would care to share with us any issues with the council, any thing that we need to be aware of, and
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing coming up is we do have an appeal of the property that's up by the event center. They asked to be rezoned to C4. from Park Historic, and they did appeal that, and it will be coming, as I recall, January 7th before council. All the zoning around it is C4, but they didn't want this to be rezoned C4 from Park Historic, so it will be coming before council.
Okay,
Other than that, that's it.
all right,
I really didn't have anything else to add later on, so.
okay, we'll watch that anxiously and see how that process unfolds. Ms. Becker, our Community Development Director, would you care to address us and share your wisdom?
No wisdom, just to address you.
It's all wisdom.
Commissioners. First of all, we had, since the last meeting, the Historic Preservation Tour, which was held on Monday, December 9th. And thank you to Commissioner Wingerter, Commissioner King for being able to join us on the tour around really the downtown with our new State Historic Preservation Officer. And it was just nice to have the Planning Commission really recognized along with the Historic Preservation team. So thank you both. We've also, since our last meeting, had a census sighting with Buzz being played by our own Commissioner Chair, which was at the Holiday Lighting. And so he was the very tall bumblebee that made the...
That was supposed to be all confidential, and
Oh, it's out now.
So it was wonderful. And what was interesting, so thank you. And I know Susan's granddaughter continues to volunteer, and we are getting set for having our census mascot Buzz on ice over at the skating rink. So we will be getting some dates set up while school is out for the winter session.
But she's leaving town for a week, so.
So we will be in good shape, probably kick off the year. But in your most recent planning magazine, or I don't know if you all get this one, you all, okay. We'll get this out to you, but there's a neat article all about Let the Count Begin and the importance of the census to commissioners as well as planning professionals. And I thought that was an interesting perspective that I thought you all would like to read because many of you have been involved. We are going to have our census chair speak at Rotary, and I know that we'll have at least two more of you involved with that presentation in January. So the census, again, for doing the planning that we do for Casper, for doing the planning for this community, which is planning you all help us with, the census data is critical. A couple other things. We have been with our MPO and our Metropolitan Planning Organization working on two big plans, one being the Long Range Transportation Plan, which has got a draft version of that document out. That was released to our Technical and Policy Committee members for public feedback this week. I would like to send it to you. It is a large document, but from a planning perspective, again, this is all about the long-range transportation goals for the Metropolitan Planning Organization for about the next 5 to 10 years. So I would like to get that out to you. We are in a public comment period. If you do have comments, I'll have you get them back to myself or Craig, but it is a solid document, and one is that is also required for us to get federal funding specifically for not only metropolitan planning, but for transit. We also have our wayfinding that's continuing to go on from a planning perspective and this new signage, but that's more of an FYI. I think the LRTP is much more in your realm. And then a couple of things. When we kick off the new year, I don't know if you all had seen your most recent issue. It was an online of Western Planner. But Western Planner has got some interesting topics. It was an email that we also got sent out to us that we'd like to incorporate into some of the trainings that we want to do in the spring with you all and get together. We've done a few trainings, but we would like to do some others, and a couple of them that are interests that have become of great interest in the West are looking at walkable cities as well as some code compliance difficulties in rural towns. So I thought those were two very relevant topics that would be pertinent for some of our get-togethers where we have lunch together and talk about current issues. So we as a team are wrapping up our annual report. You all will be featured prominently with your photograph, but we always produce an annual report for the city. So we'll be doing that to recap the 2019 year and get that put together in January. And chances are we'll have that available in a draft form for you for your January Planning Commission meeting. So that's my update.
Thank you, Liz. Commissioner Winger, Terry, let me ask you this. Are you going to get into the specifics of what all we did on that tour of with the Casper Historic Preservation?
Liz, you took a lot of the wind out of me because I was going to report on. I was just going to say where we did.
Yeah, because if you weren't, I'd like to, but I think it needs to be shared with what all we did on that. So I would ask you if you want to jump right in and go talk about that tour and what else you're doing.
Well, if I may, by the way, the group of individuals on that preservation board, they're very, very dedicated. If you're all invited, I would think. If someday they meet the second Monday of every month at 8:30 most of the times. And when you first appointed me, Bob, Mr. Chairman, I thought, am I really interested in that? But the more meetings I go to, the more I get into this thing. It's a very interesting board, I'll tell you that. But anyway, the other day, the touring around town, the old Yellowstone district, we went to Ashby Construction, and that's one of the old buildings down there on, what street is that, David?
It's the old Milo's.
Yeah, the old Milo.
Milo's Toyota.
And what he did, and he completely went through that, and it's beautiful in there. If you ever have a chance, if they ever have an open house.
It's adjacent to the David Street Station complex.
And then well, in my day, it was called Indian Ice Company, but now I guess it's called the Ice Factory. Well, John Huff's sister and brother-in-law, they have 3 different businesses in there, and they did a fantastic job in that building. And then the Nolan Chevrolet building, well, we met with Kevin, and we walked around the building a lot in the inside and all that, and he kind of explained where they're going to put the apartments and where they're going to have a courtyard and things like that. And then we stopped and we had a nice talk with, what's the gentleman's name at the Rialto again? Charles or Chuck or something like that. I'm sorry, I forget his name, but if anybody has not been in the Rialto, what I call the old Rialto cigar store, please go in there. I mean, it's unbelievable what that gentleman did in there. And I'm sorry if you're watching on TV that I forgot your name. And then we went by the Wells Fargo Bank Tower and Walcott Galleria, and then the Casper Elks Club. That's a pretty old building. And Randy, you've been involved in that as far as helping them remodel that a little bit, haven't you?
A little.
Yeah. And then the former Coca-Cola building, and then Art 321. We didn't go in it, we just drove by it. And then did you mention that they appointed 3 new individuals? Yeah, you mentioned the 3. Oh, well, there was 3 vacancies evidently, and they appointed 3 individuals. And can I say their names? One name I can pronounce, Paul Ubike. I don't know it's here, maybe somebody else. Can you pronounce that last name? I sure can.
Put me on the spot.
Huh?
Yurkowitz?
Eucharist, is that?
Yurkowitz?
Sounds right.
It's Yurkiewicz.
Eucharist. I'm so glad you're sitting right next to me, Susan. And the other one that was appointed was Anthony Jacobson. He has the architect plant building down there, and then David Bailey. And so they're the new board members.
Carolyn Buff. David Bailey was not.
And the city manager was there. And he talked about, there was one individual that had some concerns about the
Statistics?
yeah, plan. I can never say that word.
Stuck on that one.
But anyway, he answered those
Strategic
questions
plan.
for us, it's strategic. That's all I got to say.
That's right.
Thank God, right?
Well, my comments on that tour was, we did not go inside all of the buildings that Commissioner Wingeter referenced, but the ones we went inside about half of them, and to see the interior of some of these remodels of the historic structures in Casper, it was very neat.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah, they've all done a fantastic job, and it inspires you to continue down that path with what can be done, to see that with the right motivation, you can do some amazing things with these old buildings, and these folks have. Commissioner Feth and Vice Chairman Hyde, anything to report from the OID Advisory Committee?
Since you weren't there, Fred, I'll just say
Okay.
it for once.
Yeah, I got snowed in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to blame the city for not plowing my street, but I couldn't get out of my garage either.
We had a really good meeting, lots to talk about. The phase one of the David and Midwest project was complete. The state office building is on schedule. I'm not sure when that is to be completed. 2021. And then the former Plains building, you guys had the walkthrough, and that's really kind of exciting. That's going on. And then also some other property that the Stockups property was sold. And so there's, it's kind of looking pretty good up front for the future. Lots happening in the OYD, and getting the David Street Station really kind of kicked it off. So lots of interest. We just, other than that, we have, you already said the historic preservation report, so they're showing up and giving us a report at that,
Why they?
on that level too, so that's been really interesting. So we've been keeping up on that. Other than that, are we meeting December 23rd, or yeah, we put that off. Everybody's just too busy for the Christmas season, so that's our year.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I saw somebody posted on Facebook about the Plains Furniture. They're taking, they're dismantling the front part of the Nolan building where they used to park the cars for, just the front part. Are they taking the whole building down, or just the front part?
Now, the red iron's gonna come down also.
Exactly, and somebody said, oh, they're destroying the thing, and that's what I said. I said, no, they're just bringing it back to what it was before, because it used to be open. It was open way a long time ago, but, so people just don't understand what it used to look like. And I went to a tour years ago before they sold it, where they talked about that being added afterwards. So I just wanted to make sure
That part is not historic, and
no, it's not.
taking it back all the
Yes.
way to the original
Taking it
building.
to the historic part.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Hawkins, did I read your body language right, that you had something to
I'm sorry, I
share with us?
more comments. First of all, thank you guys for talking about all this historic stuff going on. In front of the Nolan, the red iron that's all there, when you see the structure, that's what comes back out and it makes it open again.
Right.
And it's gonna be
Yeah.
another plaza that's
It's going
about
to be beautiful.
roughly 80 by 80. So it's gonna be a pretty good sized plaza, and it won't necessarily be public, but I'm pretty sure it will be used for stuff like that. The other thing, Terry, just talking about some of the historic buildings going on downtown, the Wool building, they redid all of those that really aren't.
Beautiful, beautiful.
But they did, well, it's one building, but it's four separate businesses now. And it's all really, they did a nice job. And I wanted to thank you, Chairman King, for coming and give us a little show and tell on Old Glory the other night, and council appreciated that. That was fun. Other than that, you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays.
Well, and I did leave too early because one of the kids that was there asked about when Casper formed, and it was 1888, and it was formed because of the railroad needed a place to terminate for a time, but it was started in 1888. I did.
Mr. Chairman,
Just down there.
I have
Commissioner
one
Winger.
thing to say while we're talking about historic buildings, because I had a lot to do with it. The new courthouse and the Townsend Justice Center, you know, you know what we all did with it as county commissioners, and I know some people criticized us, but it made this town look quite a bit better as you drive up from the north side, driving to the south towards the mountain. And, you know, it's funny, my sister used to be assistant manager of the Townsend Hotel years ago under Mr. Green. Mr. Green, the guy by the name of Mr. Green was the manager, and my sister was the assistant manager. And my dad owned a service station now that's Subway, and I used to have to go up there and change flat tires at 2 in the morning. We was a AAA dealer. And about 2 in the morning, you know, these people would come out of the bar, the Tomahawk Bar, and they'd call, and Dad would call me in my little apartment and say, Terry, we have a service call up at the Townsend Hotel. So I'd have to change a flat tire or start somebody's car when it was 20 below zero. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up the Townsend Hotel.
Well, since we're going down
Even
that
though it
road,
wasn't in
I'm
the-
going to speak for, take the liberty of speaking for Vice Chairman Hine, because I think he shares my thoughts about one thing that we regret was tearing down the original courthouse, which was on Center Street. You know what? They thought it improved it from a historical standpoint. Those old courthouses in the center of a town area are neat to look at, and when you look at those pictures, it would have been neat to have saved that building. But with that, we're getting off track here. Are there any other issues from the commission that you'd like to bring forth and share with the rest of us? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, not seeing any. I would note that our next regular meeting is Thursday, January 16th of 2020 at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. I'll also make a note that now none of us are going off this year, is that correct? So we're all continuing to next year. At the January meeting, will we be electing officers for chairman and vice chairman? So if you're interested in those positions, that'll give you time to get out your yard signs and your work on your campaign speeches.
As long as they're not lit.
Yeah.
So no, we will have elections of officers at the January meeting. So if you're interested in those positions, be prepared to get elected. With that, I would ask Commissioner Frank if you have anything you'd like to share.
Mr. Commissioner, I would move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second that.
Second motion to adjourn by Commissioner Frank and seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Please cast your vote.
No discussion?
All members voting aye, the motion passes.
I was at a meeting recently